All right, I can see our participant number is climbing as we open our webinar this evening. Good evening and welcome to the Jack Joseph and Morton Mandel School of Applied Social Sciences Spotlight Speaker Series, part of the Advocating for Equity initiative within the school. I'm Dr. Sherry Warren, Director of Enrichment and Engagement for the Mandel School, and I am very pleased this evening to welcome Christian Nunes, a social worker with over 20 years of clinical experience, a social justice advocate and mental health expert with vast experiences leading organizations and advocating for those among us who might often be found serving at the table or working in the kitchen rather than being invited to join others at the table. She's a woman whose skills are now focused on leading the National Organization for Women. Please join me in welcoming Christian Nunes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Warren, for having me on with your group tonight for your equity series. I'm extremely excited to be with you all here. It is always wonderful as a social worker with a BSW and a master's in social work and a licensed clinical social worker to always get an opportunity and come back and speak with fellow students that are social workers and just advocates who are committed to equity work. Equity is something that has always been extremely important to me in my life ever since I was a child. One of the first experiences I remember where I felt equity was really important, especially racial equity, started when I was in seventh grade and we had relocated from Texas to Arizona, and we had no idea what we would encounter, but we were living in a predominantly white neighborhood. And immediately living there, we experienced lots of racism, very overt racism from individuals ripping off our electric meter off our house, to throwing our dog in the pool, to chasing my young brother home from elementary school. But as traumatic as that seems, what it also did was spark in me the importance of why we should all stand up and speak out when we see injustices happen. And I began to just take that time in junior high school and start getting myself involved in different programs and activities that really took the initiative to speak out for injustice, speak up for people, difference. And it's really just shaped my way of going to social work as well. Um, so my whole life, I think I've always been an activist and an advocate and even feminist before I even knew what to call it. I always grew up with very strong women in my family who also shaped my life and my decisions. And we just knew we had to be strong. We knew that we had to work together collectively to accomplish things. And it wasn't until I got to grad school that I decided to really give myself that feminism topic, really believing that women, from what I've grown up and seen and witnessed, have always been capable of achieving anything they wanted. And it's important that as a society that we also worked hard to support all women and children in all things that we needed to do. So uh, that's just a little bit about me and why I'm here. And the interesting part of what leads me to speak with you all today as a social worker and my long-term commitment and ever unwavering commitment to social work, which I'll continue to do way past ever being president of now. But I would just love really to have a conversation with all of you and answer questions and take that opportunity to just talk and talk about what equity looks like in today's landscape.
Thank you so much, Christian. And please do call me Sherry. I always joke I only make my family call me doctor.
Okay, great.
And folks that are with us this evening, please go ahead and feel free to drop your names and locations into the chat. It's always interesting to see where people are coming from. We also have a Q&A set up as part of this webinar this evening. So if you have questions, if you find your Zoom menu, most of the time it is across the bottom, there's a little box with a question mark that says it's a little like a voice bubble with a question mark. That's where you can type your questions. And my colleague Scott Wilkes will be gathering questions together and helping me present them to Christian while our conversation unfolds. So thanks for joining us this evening. It's a real pleasure to have you all with us. I do notice that we already have one hand up from one of our participants. Could you go ahead, Miriam, and type in the chat? And I will see if Scott can take care of what you need while uh, Christian and I get on with the conversation. So, Christian, you talked a little bit about starting early in your childhood with strong female influences in your life, helping you clarify and decide what it is you really wanted to do with your life.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit more about some of those early influences, who those people were, or things that you witnessed when other people stood up against powerful entities?
Sure. So I grew up from a Southern family, which I believe has a lot Southern strong family, Christian family, and a lot of that shaped who I am today. My grandmother, who we called Mama Dear, you know, God rest her soul, and my mother, I think, are probably the two strongest influences that I have had in my life. My mother, always taught us to do what we wanted to do, to be who we wanted to be truthful to who we felt we were. And she was always like the biggest cheerleader, regardless of like obstacles we may have encountered or situations. One thing that she instilled in me very early is to not to be afraid to speak my mind, to speak my voice, to use my voice, and to pursue the things that were important to me. Also, my mother was a very she's a nurse, and she was a very inclusive person. She was a person that cared for people, and she always had a diverse group of friends, and she loved people for their personalities, and who they were, and she was never judgmental. So that really helped shape a lot also of just how I grew up and how I looked at people and valued people and the difference in people. My grandmother was just powerful. She was the person that held the family together. She was joyful. I called her my friend, when I was growing up, and we had our own special relationship. Um, and just seeing she had 5 kids that she raised by herself, and in a very hard time, in this country. And so just seeing her continue to be strong, continue to perceive in her interest. Her and my mother both also sing jazz, so they share that nursing and jazz side. Um, and seeing them to like just living into their selves, like not being afraid to give the side of like give to both their sides of themselves, their creative side, their nursing side, to do what they had to take care of their families. um and just to seeing that, I think made it very easy for me to feel comfortable doing that for myself, like stepping into my authenticity, being willing to take chances, be willing to step forward, and just caring for people, and the value of caring for others and believing that everyone was had the same value. That was so important that I was taught. And that really led me, I think, to wanting to work in social work. First I wanted to be an attorney. But then I was like, well, no, I really don't want to like prosecute anybody. And I definitely don't want to have to defend anybody in court. But I wanted to be an attorney originally when I was young because it was a whole thing about seeking justice, for everyone. And that was super important. But then as I got older and I just witnessed things happening, in my neighborhood, in my community, and my family, I always thought like if there was somebody there that could just provide something or a little talk or something, it would make such a difference in some of their lives. So that's kind of how I verged into social work. It was a desire to be a reflection of things that I felt like I needed in my life, right? When we were going through things in the family, and there weren't many Black women there that I could relate to my schools. I went to a lot of predominantly white schools. besides my family, there was someone outside of my family that I had a mentor to, or just being an adolescent Black girl, a dark complexion growing up, in a predominantly white community and the challenges I faced then, just teaching me how to love myself even more and during adolescence and things like that. Like your parents will tell you, "Oh, you're beautiful, you're wonderful," but it's a whole different thing, right? When you're dealing with, adolescence and you're dealing with acceptance with your friends. And I felt, wow, if I had somebody like that for me, that would have been like really powerful. So when I actually started my journey, I started out working um in I guess domestic violence advocate work to be that person for some people, and victim advocacy. And then afterward, I got my master's. I went to being a child therapist. But it really just really does shift from that experience I had with just growing up in a family who valued people's fairness, who valued people's worth, people living in their identity. Um, I think it has really helped me shape me, want to be a part and contribute to that in this world.
It's interesting to me. You spoke of becoming an attorney being a possible goal because that's who you saw making justice happen.
Mhm.
It's really interesting to me how our attitudes or we get these ideas as young people based on what kind of television we watch, what kind of things we read, what the media tells us about folks.
Right.
I spend a great deal of my own time as a social worker trying to clarify what it is social workers really do.
Yes.
Because if you watch Law and Order, you think we do just a very narrow
Right.
set
Absolutely.
set of activities for our professional lives.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that, Sherry, because I remember when I first started my career, everyone always assumed that social workers took people's children away. And that
Mhm.
was the only thing they thought we did. It was like you work for CPS, you take people's children away. I'm like, first, I've never worked for CPS. And social work is so diverse and is so amazing. And anything I feel that being a social worker has prepared me the best for leading a national organization for women's rights and advocacy because social workers are some of the best advocates and organizers that I know, so I think that those skills that I learned really open up doors. And when I tell people, and then actually when I go to Congress and I meet with some congressional members, there's a lot that were social workers in the past before they became congressional members and members of Congress. And we always have this conversation like, yeah, everyone doesn't know if you go to social work, you're going to get what you eat, So, but yes, I totally agree. It's always this thing with trying to educate people on what social work really is.
Well, and maybe you find yourself at times teaching people what a feminist really is.
Yes, that's ongoing. That is an ongoing like educational episode. Yeah. And I think it's go ahead, Sherry. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to ask for your definition of a feminist.
Yeah, I keep it really simple. And I think keeping it simple makes people understand why feminism exists in most of us. And for me, it's the belief and the idea that women have the right to have full equality in all aspects of their life. They have the right to choose what job they choose. They'll have the family they want to have to, from pursuing a profession to choosing their lifestyle to being able to be safe, while they live their lifestyle, to be able to to be able to achieve everything a man has had the opportunity achieved and was given before us. We also have those rights to obtain. And obtain it safely without harassment or intimidation and things like that. So to me, feminism is simply allowing women to live in their full authenticity, and their full purpose, without any forms of oppression, discrimination, and just in a safe environment.
Beautifully said. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. So I'm curious, you started out as a clinical social worker working with children.
So I started out undergrad. After I graduated, I worked for a year as a domestic violence victim advocate and a victim advocate for juvenile court. So, and it's really interested in when I was my senior year in college, I actually volunteered for the Victim Advocacy Center of Coconino County. So I volunteered like while I was in school. And then after I graduated, I deferred my admission for my master's program for a year and I decided to work. So then I worked as an actual paid advocate for Coconino County in Arizona, which is one of the largest counties. It's made up most of the reservations, Hopi, Navajo Reservation in northern Arizona. So I got a really great experience in understanding how to navigate the court systems and victim services, but also just being able to be like that strong advocate, and understanding like also like the trauma impacts of of when a person is a victim and they experience different crimes, and where there's more to it than just providing services, they also need like this healing that needs to happen. So when I decided to go to Columbia, then I decided to go into therapy, and I focused on children initially, adolescents, because I always saw how a lot of times people left children out of that equation. So when there were services that were happening or therapy was needed, they would focus on the parents or the family, but not thinking about the impact that victimization had on that child or the trauma had on that child. So I actually went into it working with adolescents, yeah, as a child therapist, and I love that experience. And I did that for a very long time, and eventually added adults and became a trauma therapist.
Wow. How did you go from trauma therapist to the president of the National Organization for Women?
Yeah, it's so funny because I had after a few years I started my own practice, and my practice was half therapy and then half like clinical consultation and oversight. So working with like behavioral health group homes and agencies to provide clinical supervision, but also to make sure they were doing culturally competent work and work that was based in equity even within the behavioral health system. So I did a lot of writing policies, supervision, oversight, assessment reviews, quality assurance reviews, things like that, and then providing these guidance and these things. Because once again, working in the field, right, as a therapist, I actually notice like the disconnected policies with actual practice. So a lot of times, you learn all these wonderful things and it's great and you need it. But then when you get out in the field, these policies are written and a lot of times I feel like they leave out the actual like person with the lived experience in the policy. I feel like policies have gotten better at including the lived experience of people, but when I was practicing in 2000s, I felt like they were just so disconnected. So it's always this thing where they were like, they're resistant, they're non-compliant, they're non-compliant, they're non-compliant. And I would be like, well, no, they haven't eaten. Well, no, they're experiencing violence in the home. Well, no, their parents are going through this, or no, or the family's going through this, the family's homeless, or the family's. So I was always that therapist was like looking at like the ecosystem of everything that's happening to this person, like, no, but this is what's really happening. So however, we can't label them, non-compliant, which will prevent their services, which can have a different effect on other things when there are actually these underlying issues and things we all need to be able to reach our full potential that they're not getting met. Um, I'm one person that's a big fan of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because I think a lot of times we leave that out when we're thinking about how things play out and how a person's able to engage in services. And I'm also big on the social determinants of health as well. I think those things important things we have to think about. So going from therapy to then recognizing the disconnects and started the practice, which then I was doing consultation on telling people like, how do you write this? Like, how do you write these policies, standard operating procedures for your business, your behavioral health group home that look at all these different factors to take these in consideration. And then from just being a part of now as a member and then working through the national board, when the opportunity came up to be an officer, I was able to use and understand a lot of what I experienced working as a community organizer, doing, or going door knocking, doing bond overrides, working with as a therapist, consultant, and then take that to the advocacy place. Because it's always advocacy, not to people to understand. Social worker, you're always an advocate. you're always an advocate. So now I'm just advocating on a national scale. Now I'm advocating for more federal, legislation and policy reform than I was when I was working in a local, municipality or at the state level. So it's not really that big of a, a change. The trajectory kind of works its way if you really think about it, because in one place you're working directly with people and you're seeing what they're experiencing and you're seeing where the problems are, disconnects, and then you transition to actually being in a place where you can communicate what you've seen and those disconnects. So now I'm in a place where I can talk with lawmakers and say, hey, actually, this policy is missing this really important area, or this language in this policy is not really effective, or it's not strengths based, or it's not trauma informed. So let's think about how we can reword this policy that will be effective, that will be inclusive. And hey, by the way, did you talk to anybody who actually has this experience? Did you talk to survivors? Did you talk to the unhoused? Did you talk to people to see what they feel is impacting them from being able to meet these needs? So that's the position I'm in now. It's no difference. It's just at a larger scale. So I always say it's really a natural progression because I just went from being an advocate in my city to my state to now on the national level.
I love what you said. It's always advocacy.
Mhm.
It's always about advocacy.
Absolutely.
And you have just made the most perfect connection from between micro, meso, and macro social work. I couldn't have scripted that better. Thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
so much.
Yeah.
Well, since you are so focused on policy and advocacy at the level you're at nationally, what are some of the issues that you're working on that you can tell us about?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think if we just turn on the television every day, or we open our phones and read the news, we're seeing like this huge attack, I feel, on women. I feel like there is definitely a misogynistic agenda that we're seeing happening, where we're seeing the rights and bodily autonomy and personal autonomy, um, and erasure of identities that's happening every single day. We were seeing people just it's almost like this new sense of like caste system that I feel like we're almost experiencing, that's trying to happen, where there's like these very, very billionaire rich, who are operating and controlling the ability for everyday people to live and survive. So, I mean, the policies we're seeing right now, it's very tough because you're seeing a lot of like policies being passed because of the makeup of Congress that is really out trying to erase people's rights, is out trying to erase their right to have equity, from taking away benefits to cutting Medicaid and Medicaid insurance, trying to do away with the Affordable Care Act, which is important. It gives everyone access to care, cutting social safety nets, slashing departments and then going in and saying, okay, well, um, we don't need so much Medicare. We don't need um, a person to have the right to choose for themselves. So we see a lot of this healthcare right now an attack in policies. We're pushing for Medicare for all. We're still pushing for, of course, are pushing essentially opposition against the threats of a federal abortion ban, and also leading to medication abortion as well. Those are still active fights we see. But we're also just seeing a fight regarding our right for democracy and our right to have a free and fair election. With one important act that we're really advocating strong for right now is the SAVE Act, which has a detrimental impact on women, particularly because it's requiring certain documentations um, that have to match in order for you to register to vote. And we know many women, that doesn't work. Many women had to up until recently, change their last names when they were married. Um, Older elderly women don't have their birth certificates. And a lot of women have different names from their birth certificates from marriage. And so now you're seeing a law that they're pushing, and it's actually growing, and people are voting for this, that would restrict the rights to many people, many citizens from being able to vote because their names don't match on IDs.
Mhm.
That is the biggest form of oppression, I think we've seen. We also see that they're trying to also challenge um, mail-in ballots. And then there's a new one coming out. I don't know if this came out for the executive order or I have to think about it, where they're trying to say um, you need a passport now to be able um, to register. That's a new one they're trying to pass for, and not a birth certificate, but a passport is the newest one they're trying to push out, which is ironic because you need a birth certificate, a passport. So but these are the things that we're seeing. It's like a lot of attacks are coming through that are really trying to take a person's right to vote away, which is trying to, just remove power from them from being able to exercise their voice and have the ability to have this free and fair election to choose who are the people that best reflect them, which carries out into whether or not we have an abortion ban in the state, a federal abortion ban, or whether we have states that support it, or where we have states that are sanctuary cities that look for people with immigration status
Mhm.
that are safe, or whether we're attacking them and we're profiling them like we're seeing right now happen. It also has a big impact on education. We know right now our education system's under attack. And when you have people and lawmakers who support these things and support taking away the IDEA Act, which is about disability education, you know, it's amazing like the things that we're facing right now. I mean, I never I I'll be honest, I never thought in 2025 we would be in this place. I never thought we would be in this place in 2025. I never thought that the word women, gender, diversity, inclusion, equity, community, mental health, did you know that as well, would be on a list of banned and targeted words for organizations. I mean, mental health is a word that they're using on the list of targeted words. So if organizations use that word, and they receive federal funding, it's considered part of the anti-DEI movement that we're seeing happen. So we're doing a lot of pushes against the anti-DEI movement because that impacts everybody, everybody. So that's a big, huge thing we're doing with signing on coalition partners and advocating regarding that. We're really advocating heavily for the insurance parts and making sure people have Social Security Fairness Act and
Mhm.
the Medicare, and just Medicaid expansion is not taken away. And then we're also pushing a lot for also the protections of women and indie violence against women, because right now, it was one point in time where gender-based violence and violence against women was something that just happened, like, in the physical form. But now there's a whole new era where it is happening digitally, and there's a whole new level of intimate based sexual abuse that occurs, which is non consensual, which is having major impact on people's mental health, and
Mhm.
also increasing their risk of harm from people stalking and harassing them and taking that violence offline into real life, or and I shouldn't say real life, but into actual the person, the physical places. So we've been pushing a lot as well for just preventing like AI deepfake imagery, working to put bills in place that protect individuals who are experiencing, all types of cyber flashing, cyber abuse, just digital violence as well, because that's really, really causing a lot of harm and growing just rapidly. So we're advocating for all things. We really work from an intersectional framework of understanding how they all play together. But the attacks I'm seeing this right now are very concerning to me. I think if I was, as a survivor, how they feel, you know, um, knowing who's representing the administration and some of the charges or alleged charges that we know have existed with some of the cabinet members, and the actual president, and how that feels, when we talk about trauma informed care, we talk about re-traumatization. Um, I think about children and parents who are struggling trying when, um, rent is $1,800 a month, but yet minimum wage hasn't risen from 7.25 since 2009. And so we're expecting people, that's another thing we're doing, one fair wage, to raise the minimum wage and sub minimum wage. But we're expecting people to be able to survive and thrive, and then we're going to take away benefits, but yet we're not giving them the means to be able to do that because most people are living like a paycheck away from homelessness. Um, and what that has when they have to choose between paying a bill or feeding their child. Those are the things that we have to think about, and those are the things that we're speaking out and working hard for, because the impact that they have is devastating and harmful. And as a society, I believe that we have to get back to that collective mindset of being in solidarity and understanding how one person's oppression has direct impact on our oppression. So we also push this really education awareness about that as well.
Christian, you brought up pay equity, and I think you probably know that's the original reason I reached out to the
Yeah.
National Organization of Women
Hmm.
was to have some conversation about pay equity or pay inequity.
Hmm.
And from that, well, it just got me to thinking about the first time I really remember hearing about a feminist organization or a feminist framework was around the ERA.
Right.
And it makes me wonder, and this is related to a question that has come up in the Q&A. Um, Given that was my introduction to feminism, really, and I didn't understand what was happening with it. What what is the current climate or the state of affairs with feminism or the feminist movement,
Mm,
especially when we think about women's votes?
right. Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, it's stronger. And because I feel like a lot of women and allies understand the importance of um, the need for women's equality and equity. I also feel like it's more diverse. The feminist movement is more diverse, right? The waves have shifted and changed, and there's been problems, right? Let's be honest. Like there's been some, and through the feminist movement that hasn't really shown full inclusion, has left people out, have left women of color out, left lesbian women out. There's been problems through the feminine, but also would say that we see this in all movements too, right? So I don't want to just pick on the feminist movement, but what I will say is what we're seeing now in the movement is that we're understanding the importance of intersectionality. We're understanding the importance of understanding the beautiful, I call it the beautiful complexity of individuals, of women, the multiple identities that we wear, but then also understanding like how that oppression, right, impacts us based on our identities. And therefore our work can't be cookie cutter. Our work understanding feminism can't be cookie cutter, and it'll be very nuanced in different places. And then we have to also make sure that we are working with coalition partners who are people of lived experience, who are the experts in that experience to guide us in this work of feminism. I think I see more of that. It's really important that you didn't used to see is that feminism and women's groups are now working in coalition with other groups to make sure that they are doing the work accurately and effectively. So even for now, we work in a lot of coalitions. Every time, I mean, that's a big thing for me as leading, since I've been leading, because now it's not an expert, right? We're not the expert. We're more like a generalist organization. We're not the expert in LGBTQIA. We're not the expert in racial justice or violence against women or anything. They're all our core issues that we focus on, but we're not the expert. So in order for us to do our work effectively, I need to go to that expert group. I need to go to HRC. I need to go to GLAAD for if I'm doing LGBTQIA work. I need to go to Trans Visibility. I need to go to them to work with them directly to make sure that I'm representing and I'm advocating effectively and I'm saying what I need to say. My messaging is correct and it's not harmful. Just as I'm going to anything regarding racial justice, right? We team up with NAACP, National Council for Negro Women, and Black Women's Blueprint, AAPF, the Asian American Pacific Women Families. And we have to pair it up with them to make sure that we're still representing the experiences of the diverse group of women the right way, that we're communicating what their experiences are, and we're advocating for policies that are going to help them as well and uplift their voices in a positive light. So that's been a big push that I've been making sure that now has been doing. Um, And I think that's what I see happening more so. So we work on a lot of coalition work, and coalition work is essential to do this work, right? And I see that as a difference, and I see that as also why more people are calling themselves feminists, even men, because they see the beauty and the value of being a feminist and what that stands up for their sister and their mother and their cousins, their wives, their partners, their friends, who also they believe have the right to have that full, safe life. So I think in some ways it's gotten better. You're gonna always deal with, the negative of everything, but I think overall I see more people aligning with feminism and the importance of it.
Your intersectional approach is, I believe, incredibly essential to do this work well. And you are beautifully modeling what might be called by the Council on Social Work Education cultural humility,
Yes.
or identity humility, just really understanding, as you said, the complexities.
Mhm. And I really love the term cultural humility because I think it's so important to understand that that's really is about having this humble attitude about how you're approaching this work, and understanding that you'll never ever be an expert in somebody else's experience. You just won't, right? And you have to go into it understanding that, and you have to go into that looking at it like, what do I need to know? How can I be an effective ally? How do I speak? How do I walk? How do I talk? What do I say to be an effective ally? And not assuming because you've been an activist for 40 years that you're an expert and you know everything. No, you do not. I still learn things every day, So even about, even the diversity, I always tell people too, it's like one area I think we could do better at is also sometimes even within groups like Black folk, is like understanding there's a lot of difference in Black folk, right? We have different cultures, and sometimes they look at it as a monolithic thing too, and they approach it differently. But how you can't, you have to look at those experiences like are so unique, and what people experience and how they see the view of the world is so unique, and we are never experts in it. We always have to go and ask and learn.
Absolutely. Another participant this evening has submitted a question and says, "Hi, Ms. Nunes. Thank you for
Hi,
spending time with us this evening.
thank you for having me.
What do you suggest we do to maintain our resilience?" Oh, I'm scrolling a little too fast. In a time where, as you mentioned, we're enduring an administration that is actively trying to dismantle our rights, pushing oppressive measures on the most vulnerable.
Yes. Well, thank you for that question. It's a great question. And I think it's an important question, right? Because sometimes I think people forget that we are still human, and we're still affected by things, and we're still impacted by things. And a lot of us, I think, sometimes are experiencing all of what's happening in the midst of trying to advocate, defend, and protect their rights. So one thing I always recommend for people is it's so important, like to do that self-awareness check and that self-assessment check in these times of resistance, and give yourself grace. If it's a lot for you at the moment, take the break you need, because the work is gonna be there, but you have to make sure that you're in a healthy place and your needs are being met, holistically. Your health, your mental health, your physical health, everything needs to be met for you to be able to be even an effective advocate. So I always say, like, when this resistance high, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling a little pressure, take the pause. Take the pause as long as you need to take the pause. And then when you're ready, come back. Because we got work for you to do. So you will have work to do, but it's so important to take those pauses. Like, I take them. I have to give some of my boundaries and protect my weekends because I have a 5-year-old, right? And my time is for him on the weekends. He deserves my time. So I pause, like, hey, listen, this is not an emergency. Y'all need to talk to me on Monday. Like, sometimes, unless I'm working on the weekend, sometimes I work on the weekend, right? But I'll also create boundaries where I don't work every weekend because of a child I'm raising. And he deserves to still have his joy. And he deserves to just have his fun. And I have a right to give him that and to have that joy with my child. So I always tell people, take those pauses you need in this resistance. Don't feel bad or like you're not doing enough. The other thing I always say is there's multiple ways to be an advocate. There's multiple ways to be an activist. Everyone's role is not to be on the line, on the front line on the street and protesting. Some of us do really great work by writing. Some of us do really great work by making phone calls. Some of us do really good work about working on policy. Some of us good work by just working with people and making sure people have their needs met in this hard time. We all have a way to do it. There's multi-strategy effect to be effective in moving and bending that arc. And so you have to figure out what works best for you. What is your strength? Use your assets to the best that work for you. And don't feel like it's less than the next person. Okay? It's not. If we're all working toward the common good and the ultimate goal of justice and fairness and equality, as long as we're keeping that in mind and we're not doing harmful things, which you can if you're working toward those things, um but and if I think that it matters, and you can't feel like your contribution doesn't matter because right now you don't have a lot to give, or you can't give a lot because you're working. Well, do that job, because when you get that job, it's going to help you be able to go back and give. But always first do your own self check. Recognize when your body is telling you that you need a break, that you need to take off and not look at the news today, that you need to turn off social media today, that you need to not have any conversations about politics today, that you need to just take some joy today. Like, pay attention to those very, very important things. And then also just make sure you understand that there's multiple ways to be effective. We don't all have to do the same thing the same way.
You are absolutely right. And you know what else about your son? Not only does he deserve his joy and his childhood, he deserves to have his mama as part of his life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's right. So there's so much going on right now, and uncertainty is one of the words that it comes up in almost every conversation, and it's not just me bringing it up.
Mhm.
What are you doing to stay motivated and to not get discouraged
Mm.
in this unprecedented time, as we keep hearing? Um, how are you staying grounded?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I have this saying that I live by, and that is pain is only temporary if we just hold on, right? Meaning that the experience, what we're all experiencing, is a lot. For some of us, the first time in our lives we ever had these experiences. And part of the intention is to overwhelm everyone and create chaos, right? That's part of this intention that we're seeing happen. So I feel that for you have to find those things in your own self that help you stay grounded and focused. For me, I it's nighttime music, it's spending time with my family, it's just connecting, it's doing things that are joyful for me. And it's also me understanding that I can't do it all. I just can't. And I can't pretend like I can do it all. Um, I could do my part, and I have to do my part with in full intention and purpose, and goodwill, but I can't do everything. And I set my boundaries. Boundary setting is huge for me. And I will tell you, when I first started this job, I didn't like, it was like so much, right? It was like, oh, constantly. And I caught myself like, oh my gosh, like, this is never stopping. And I had to say, wait, this world is not perfect yet. Like, it's not gonna stop. So I had to like do a check, right? And set my boundaries and then say, mm-mm, no, no, no. Like, I'm gonna be available for the things and be available for. I'll take a phone call here and there. If I'm working on the weekend, I'll work on the weekend. I'll do my 100%, but I can't give it all. I can't. You cannot call me at 10 o'clock at night. Yeah, I have a family. You can't. Everything can't be an emergency. I had to set those personal boundaries for me, and I think in this place and time we're at, I think that's a lot of us are going to have to do. We're going to have to really work on our boundary work, and our self care work. And I think that we're going to have to also understand that this is not anything new that we're experiencing, right? Like, movements have been through this, like our ancestors have been through this. But really, we still have it better than a lot of our ancestors did when when they were fighting for justice and equality and for the things that we have right now. So we still are in a better place than they were. And it's hard for us because we never had that. We had the privilege of not having, like some countries have to always be in a war, or some countries that have to figure out how they're going to eat for the day or just survive or not. I mean, we still have this privilege, particularly in this country, that many people don't have. We still have the privilege we can say how we feel and not get jailed, even though I'm gonna stop with that. But you know, yeah, basically we overall have that privilege, right? Um, so I think we have to like look at it and remind ourselves that, but also remind ourselves that we've always like the way we've gotten this far is because people have persisted, because people didn't stop, and people kept pushing through the pain. And we're gonna have to push through this pain. That's a big part of what we're gonna have to do right now. It's gonna be uncomfortable for many of us. It's going to get overwhelming sometimes for many of us, but we have to keep pushing through this pain because the majority of the movements had happened because people pushed through that pain. They knew the greater good, they knew the greater cause, they knew the value of this world being a better place. If everyone stuck through it and they held on and they committed and had this unwavering commitment. So this is where we're going to have to chime in on is how do we become this next set of foot soldiers, right? How do we become the ones who stay the line, who stay the course, don't give up, don't retreat, don't let bullying, hate, threats, and fear get us to stop, because that's a big part of what the pressers try to do, right? They overwhelm you with it. That's the whole goal. So we're going to have to push that line. We're going to have to hold. We're going to be new foot soldiers. And we're going to have to realize it's going to be painful for a minute, but it's just temporary. If we all work in solidarity, we're going to push through. So I encourage everyone that, like, that's what we have to do. We have to stay, my favorite quote is by Audre Lorde. And she says, I am not free if my sister is unfree, even if her shackles are very different from my own. We all got to get in that mentality of thinking that it doesn't matter if the person who's experienced oppression, I don't relate to it, or we need to join in and stand up for them. Because when it happens to us, we want them to join in and stand up for us. So we're going to have to get into place of understanding that we have to fight wholeheartedly, inclusively, holistically against oppression, against injustice. It can't be corrupt. It can't be siloed. It can't be compartmentalized. It can't be prioritized. Justice cannot be prioritized. Equality cannot be prioritized based on what your best interests are. And I think that's where we're going to have to get, Sherry. I think we have to get to a place of understanding that to push us through, but also recognize it's going to be painful for a minute, but we can't give up because it's painful. We have to keep pushing because all great movements went through this and they were victorious in the end, and we're going to be victorious at the end too. That's just what I believe and know.
That is incredible advice. I wonder what's one piece of advice that maybe you got as you were stepping into yourself professionally, or that you would like to share with some of these about to graduate social workers or learning about this profession students?
Yeah. The simplest piece of advice that I received early on that I still live by today is to be true to myself. Like, just be true to who I am, be true to my idiosyncrasies, be true to my style, um, just be true to who I am as a person, because everybody has the ability to impact someone, right? And what you can give to somebody can make a conversation, the simplest things can make a huge difference in helping move us toward this place you want to be. And you may not see it at that moment, but it's going to impact somebody. So you just have to be true to who you are. You have to stay true to your purpose and who you are as you're entering social work. And as you're getting 1,000 pieces of advice about, like, you should do this. No, you really need to do this. You should be no, you do what works for you. Because I remember when I was becoming a social worker, people were like, "You're so smart, Christian. Why would you be a social worker? You need to go to school, be a doctor, attorney, and make some money." But that was in my heart. It's not that's not what was not true to me. So I stuck what was true to me, and I worked what was true to me. And I've still been able to do everything I wanted to do, being true to myself. So I encourage you to be true to yourself on your path and your trajectory to go the way it needs to go. And you work at it and you be true and you stay true and you stay have integrity and you will get where you want to be.
My colleague, Dr. Wilkes, who's with us this evening, often tells me, just be your authentic self.
Absolutely.
She's plenty enough.
Absolutely. Totally 100% agree.
And I so appreciate that. Christian, when I reached out, one of the things I was hoping that you would be able to do is make a recommendation for our viewers about a resource that has been helpful for you or powerful for you, something that you listen to or that you read, a recommendation to help our listeners step more into their roles as advocates.
So I actually thought about this question, and there's a couple different books that
Okay.
I want to recommend. And I feel like they all have really great purposes to really kind of help you get different viewpoints. They're different topics, but I'll tell. So the first one is a book called One Fair Wage, and it's by Saru Jayaraman. And it's actually about the history of how tip workers and low wages started in slavery, and started because they didn't want to pay Black people for work, and then eventually it shifted and changed. But it really talks about the history of why we have low wages and low income and how that still kind of resides itself even to this present day. It's a great book. I do a lot of work with Saru, like I said, I work on One Fair Wage campaign because, like I said, tip workers are still only making $2.33 right now in 2025. Not guaranteed tips, and many people I've met are homeless and working to tip jobs to try to pay. And also the fact that the minimum, our wage has not raised from 2009 and who that really benefits. So I think that's a good book to get some history, like some historical understanding about where this really came from, right? And why we're still here and why it was designed to be this way. Another really good book I really like is Hood Feminism by and oh God, I'm butchering her name, Mikki Kendall. So I know for sure. Yeah, that's a great book. And the reason I really like that book is it addresses the feminism movement and it talks about, this journey through feminism and the people who often were a part of these big parts of movements in feminism that were often left out, and not given their flowers and not recognizing for their contributions, and how that plays out today with the intersectional feminism and what that feminism really looks like, right? So I really, really, really like that book. Um, and the last book I'm going to recommend is called How to Raise a Feminist Son, and it's by Sonora Jha. And I love that book. And it's a really interesting read too. It's like the storytelling type of storybook she does, but it focuses on also the importance. It's not up to women to just be feminists. It's also about raising your sons to be feminists, raising your sons to value and support and understand women, and their purpose and their ability to be equal, and then raising them not to buy into toxic masculinity, which is so, so important to what we're experiencing right now in this world. So those are three that I really like, that I would recommend. There's so many, but those are definitely like three that I really, really like, and I think they set this tone very well to help you in understanding how you can interact with people and how you can apply the concepts in these books to the work that you're doing.
Thank you. And viewers, will send out a follow-up email with the names of all of those books and their authors so that you don't have to have captured them in this moment. Christian, as our time is coming to a close, I would love to hear from you. What can we do? What can those of us who are watching and who care, what is the best thing for us to do?
So get involved. And like I said earlier, there are multiple ways to get involved. There are multiple ways to make a difference. It might be you having conversations in your community. It It might be just having a conversation with your family first. It could be calling, Congress. It could be writing letters. It could be bringing food to an event, supporting it that way. It could be helping write a policy. I've seen some amazing policies be drafted by students that have, are just exceptional. So I just encourage everyone to think about where your strengths lie and use your strengths to help move this change. Help use your strengths to help get equity. Use your strengths to get this equality that we're seeking. But we know we have to have equity before we can have equality, right? So we have to move toward equity first. So use those strengths, for the areas that you work best with, and not be afraid to reach out to people, not be afraid to get part of organizations that you align with. Now you can join now NOW.org, you can join League of Women Voters, you can join AAW, you can join NAACP, you can join any organization that is writing for the right purpose, that is moving you into the right direction, and of course now for now since I joined now. But I also want to say that you also have to align with an organization that you feel represents you. So I'm totally aware of that. And so I think that's going to be important, is get involved, see how you can contribute and be a part of this. We need everyone in this fight right now. It is something different and it's unprecedented that we've ever seen, for a long time here in the United States. So I would say definitely let's get together and let's work in solidarity for, equality and justice.
Christian, thank you so much. And I know that representation matters.
Absolutely.
And I am thrilled to have you representing women.
Thank you so much.
My personal words, you representing us and working on the issues that affect so very many of us, all of us who identify as women, who care about women, who have women as part of your lives,
Absolutely.
and who want to see a more equitable world.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to come and speak with you all this evening. And I look forward to the work that all of the students are going to be and how they're going to contribute to this world. And thank you both, Sherry and Scott, for just opening the space and having this series, right, to be able to have these conversations.
It's much appreciated. And Scott, if you'd go ahead and share our final slide. Christian, again, thank you so much. We are working at the Mandel School with Case Western Reserve University on bringing more speakers to the community who can share their sense of advocacy, who can inspire us with their fiery words of wisdom. And if you have thoughts about who that might be, please share with us in our evaluation of this conversation and of our Spotlight Speaker series. Christian, it has been such a thrill to have you, especially so early on as we are developing this program and really trying to bring powerful voices to the forefront of advocacy and into our students' educations. We are so full of gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And again, for our guests, you will receive a follow-up email with the QR code for the evaluation, names of resources, and hopefully quite soon, a link to where a video of this recording will be living on the Mandel School's YouTube page. So we will send you that information as soon as it is available. Thank you all so much for being present this evening. I'm just overwhelmed by the generosity of the community and especially of you, Christian, to share your wise words with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I wish you all the best.
Good night.
Good night.